to bring in my panel now. Robert Trainum is an MSNBC contributor and a former advisor to President Bush. Molly Ball is a staff writer at The Atlantic. And Steve McMahon is, of course, a Democratic strategist. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Robert, I want to start with you. What did you hear yesterday, both in terms of Arizona and the trip to Mexico? Do you think Donald Trump took any steps toward expanding his base of support, which is what he needs to do right now?
Expanding his base, no. Look, flying down to Mexico and actually seeing that press conference, I actually thought Donald Trump did a very good job in terms of the stagecraft, in terms of the messaging.
A lot of people said it was his most presidential moment.
You took the words out of my mouth. He appeared to be presidential. I actually thought that the president of Mexico I thought this was a trap, quite frankly. I thought that the president of Mexico was going to stand in front of the cameras and chastise Donald Trump about the wall and about, literally offending so many millions of Mexicans. We didn't see that happening. What I thought, Donald Trump was going to fly home or maybe have a rally in Arizona, but it'd be very presidential, very subdued, and almost uplifting, if you will. What we saw was a complete 180 when he landed in Arizona, him yelling into the microphone, him doubling down on that rhetoric. What we saw a few hours ago was a lot of his Hispanic advisors scratching their heads saying, what is going on here? What is the message here? So for every 2 steps that Donald Trump took yesterday, it was 5 steps back.
Molly, put this into a broader perspective. If you're inside the Trump campaign, how disconcerting is the fact that you do have some of these Latino leaders who are now leaving the campaign, saying they're not going to be a part of it, they no longer support Trump?
It's a huge problem. I mean, as you said, what he needs to be doing now is not keeping his base in the tent, but actually getting new people to decide to support him. And a lot of those new people are non-white people, the people that he would need to potentially win this election. And instead what he's doing is actively repelling those people, actively making those people not want to vote for him. And even the ones who had been willing over more than a year of tough immigration rhetoric to still be in that tent. Now they are saying this is the last straw. They can't support him. I think he got by for more than a year saying tough things but winking and nodding to some people in the Hispanic community, some conservatives in the Hispanic community. When he finally decided to come out and say for sure where he stood and how he felt about immigrants, that they're dangerous, scary people, that was enough for a sizable number, I think, of Hispanic conservatives.
Well, and Steve, there's no doubt last night's speech was red meat to the base. But if you're the Clinton campaign and if you're Democrats, he had a pretty good day from an optics perspective, as Robert was saying.
He had a pretty good few hours, but it's almost like, and I don't want to diagnose a medical condition here, but it's like the Prozac wore off on the plane on the way to Phoenix, because he was a calm, reasonable, almost presidential-looking candidate yesterday in Mexico. And then he gets on the plane and he gets off an angry white man screaming at people, raising the specter of Willie Horton. I mean, what he basically did was he started his speech by saying, these brown people are coming into the country, and the people who are supposed to be putting them in jail and keeping them restrained are not. And they're getting out, and they're killing white people. That's effectively what he was saying, and it's deplorable.
And what's really interesting, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Did he erase what he achieved in Mexico, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, what's really interesting, remember, it's Arizona. I mean, this is a border state. I mean, this was literally ground zero in many ways, because remember, Jan Brewer, the former governor of Arizona, kind of stoked this xenophobia, for lack of a better term, a couple of years ago with the whole stand your ground with respect to ID. I want to go back to something else that's really important here, I think. I think Donald Trump has confused everybody, including himself, in terms of his policy. You listen to Rush Limbaugh, which I occasionally do, not always, but you listen to him, you listen to some other people. People are saying, well, what do you believe? Are you softening your immigration stance, or are you doubling down? Because on the presidential stage, if you will, down in Mexico, it appeared that he appeared to be softening his stance, going back to Arizona, go right back to the red meat. So it's very confusing. He's sending mixed messages, and to his base, I'm not exactly sure what his base really believes now.
All right,
I actually don't think it's confusing. This was a decision by Donald Trump and the Donald Trump campaign. Yes, he said a lot of contradictory things. Yes, he sent a lot of contradictory signals. But this was the speech where he laid out the decision that he made at that crossroads of, do you decide to take a different tack toward the general electorate? Do you double down on the rhetoric with which you began the campaign? And the decision was made, those words were on a teleprompter, and that was the way he decided to position
in the general
himself.
election, or do you double down the primary?
That's right.
The primary is over, Donald. It's over.
That's right.
And now the general election may be over, too.
All right, we have a lot more to chew on. Stick around. Fantastic panel.